Let's look into the commodities markets. Okpeyemi Ogutadi is a senior investment officer at the Financial Derivatives Company Limited. Good morning, Okpe.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
A lot has been going on in the commodities market, but let's start off by taking a look at the MPR. I'm sure you heard what happened, and you also read the communicator to see what decisions and considerations were taken by the MPC to arrive at hiking at 14%, hiking the rate to 14%. But let's talk about how this would probably impact on the commodities market. And in this respect, FMCGs who are directly affected by what goes on in the forex market and in the larger economy. Just give us your thoughts about what this impact may likely be to them.
Well, for FMCGs, for one, a number of these FMCGs do have to try to get credit to import a number of their commodities, because some of the commodities that they use in their finished products are actually imported, and they have to get through to letter of credit to try to import these commodities. And if you're having the benchmark interest rate, so to speak, increasing by 200 basis points from 12 to 14%, it means this would affect other rates in the market, like lending rates, for instance, and this would definitely affect their cost of borrowings. And that would, the reason why the MPC increased the interest rates is to curb inflationary pressures and indirectly improve growth as well. But then if you're looking at what happened the day after, the interest rates increased, if you look at what happened at the parallel market, rather the interbank market, the Naira depreciated to an all-time low of 334.50 to a dollar. And in that sense, it makes you think, okay, so if we're trying to target, should we say we're trying to target lower currency exchange by attracting investment inflows, by increasing the interest rates, and then a day after you're seeing a depreciation. What comes to the minds of most economic agents is that, okay, maybe this policy decision was not the right decision. But I would like many to try to, understand that there's a lag effect between when the policy is implemented and when you actually feel the impact. Just because it depreciated a day after doesn't mean that we are not going to see an appreciation in the foreign exchange market in a later period.
It just shows how impatient we can be. And
yes,
because we have been in this situation for a long time, where food prices have been rising, we all want a change, and a drastic one at that. But really, how do you think we would have to deal with high prices of commodities, especially agri-commodities locally? Because many of our foods are still imported.
Yes.
Even if you're trying to grow domestic production, we're seeing the Agro-Rice program of the central bank having to encourage rice production locally.
Yes.
But we still import some amount of our food. But how much of impact would this have on the prices of domestic commodities?
Well, in the case of domestic commodities, the reason why we're seeing an increase in price in these commodities is because some of them are imported. Like you rightly mentioned, rice. The price of a bag of rice, bag of 50 kg of rice, has gone up from 9,500 naira from last year to about 16,000 naira this year. So that's almost doubling the price. And the reason why is because Nigeria does not produce enough rice to meet domestic demand. But this was not always the case. If you take a trip down memory lane, in the 1960s, Nigeria was actually considered to be almost self-sufficient. About 99% of our production was able to meet our demand. But then if you go down to the 1990s, we realized that production was just about 357 tons. 57,000 tons was produced, and yet demand was about 1.45 million tons. That's domestic demand. And for that reason, we saw that there was a supply deficit, and we had to start importing rice to meet domestic consumption. And that has been the case over the years. And the reason why is because we've seen population growth growing at a faster pace, or increasing at a faster pace compared to production of food crops in Nigeria. But if we look at what the government has done, the government has tried to implement a number of policies to encourage production, to increase yields. But it appears that these policies are unsustainable, so to speak, because you implement this, a new government comes, you implement a certain policy to encourage production, then a new government comes in, and then it changes they change everything. For instance, we know that in 1985 there was a ban on importation of rice because of it was draining external reserves. And then in 1997 you have rice imports. The government liberalized it, and you could import rice again. Even more recently, if you look at last year in October, there was a ban on imports of rice through land borders, and then you come back in March, they removed the ban. And then you come back in March, they're putting the ban back. So there's this, and for farmers, what they're trying to do is, once you ban imports, it means there's a lot of demand on their side. So they're encouraged to, increase production, to produce more. But then when you're, opening the markets or closing the markets, it's kind of, creating this level of uncertainty to farmers, because they're never too sure if this production, or rather rice they're producing, is going to be able to sell off. Because at the end of the day, the average Nigerian prefers the imported rice to the locally produced rice. But
some are actually embracing the locally produced ones,
yes.
Especially if they're of good quality and you're able to know how to prepare it. I think the local ones are beginning to be attractive to Nigerians.
Yes, they're attractive, but then another thing is that farmers are facing challenges in terms of the quality of seeds, and the quality of seeds determines the quality of the rice that you're going to produce. I mean, in Nigeria, for instance, a lot of farmers are complaining that with this foreign exchange, because they have to import this in, and this seeds are expensive to purchase, so they have to settle for the low quality.
Thank you so much, Okoyemi Ogutade. There's so much to talk about on the commodities market here on the show. Thank you so much for your time.